Alright, so, I was wondering why all these people were popping in my stream and leaving. Alright, starting over. Take two. Hi! Take two. This is, as you see, I've got the 2-camera setup again. My husband spent a bunch of time today fiddling around, and we can get it to work on his computer, so yay, this is fantastic. And I've been testing it for a solid 7 minutes and not a single drop frame, so I think this is awesome. So 2-camera setup. The only thing I have to remember now is this camera. I've got it set up a little weird today because I want to show you the stuff that happens here and the stuff that happens here. So of course when I'm here, you can't see me talking to the camera. So I have to remember, if I'm talking to you, I gotta look at that camera. Today we're going to be working on binding. I'm going to be binding the Final Fantasy quilt, and I'm going to be binding the Hyrulean Shield quilt. These are the two that I quilted on the stream the other night, so I need to get them done. If I can finish these two within the 3-hour time frame, then I'm going to get it a couple times. Nicole's sending me all the dolls that she's been working on today. If I can get them done within the 3-hour time frame, then I will get the Link stained glass quilt finished. I'll get that quilted out. Don't think I'm going to get it done within 3 hours because these two are really big quilts, so they may take me the whole 3 hours to bind them. So that's what we're doing today, is we're binding day. So, first step is, whenever we're doing binding, we need to figure out how much binding we need to cut and how much binding we need to put on. So the first quilt that I'm going to be doing is the Final Fantasy quilt. So with this quilt, what I've done is I folded it over twice, and I'm going to measure it. It does not have to be an exact measurement because we're cutting the binding, so it's fine. So in this case, it's about 20 inches wide times 4, so it's 80 by, here again, doesn't have to be perfect, 80, and that's 24 times 4, so 24 times 4, so it's an 80 by 96, which makes sense, it's a queen size quilt. So I'm going to take the 96, I'm going to add in the 80, so 176, that's for 2 sides. I have 4 sides, so I'm going to multiply this by 2. 352 inches around is the diameter of my entire quilt. So now I need to figure out how many strips of binding. Most fabrics are between 42 and 44 inches. This one, I believe, is 44. Yes, 44 inches. Now, whenever we're doing binding, whenever you sew the strips together, you lose a few inches. So whenever I figure out how much binding that I need to cut, I actually divide it by 40 inches. So I take out 4 inches. So if it's only 42, then I divide it by 38. So this binding's 44. So I'm going to divide this 352 by 40 inches. So that tells me 8.8 strips. So I need 9 strips. Okay, so let's cut 9 strips for this. In fact, let's take this, and I'm just going to set it down there for now. So we are going to cut 9 strips for the binding. Now, whenever you cut binding, there's a couple of different schools of thought of the size of binding, what you need to do for binding, things like that. Okay, no, I can't. I was going to say, the secret project that I've been working on, it's a double-sided quilt, so I actually did a double-sided binding. So it's different than the binding I'm going to make today. And I was going to try to show you the binding without showing you the quilt, but I don't think I can do that. So after Spring Market, the next time I do binding day, I'll show you that and how I did the binding on that quilt. So I like it. So I do my binding 2.5 inches. So the way that the style of binding I do, 2.5 inches is what I want to cut. So I'm cutting 9 2.5-inch strips. And I decided to do the gray fabric for it because when I was adding on all the borders, I felt that adding on another gray border would have been nice to frame it, but it was just getting too big and too wieldy, and I was just trying to find a better solution So Iron Bandsgram suggested, instead of adding a gray border and black binding, why don't I just make the binding gray? And I said, oh, that's a good idea. So that's what I'm doing. Okay, so there's 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. There we go. And let me put this down here out of the way. That up there out of the way. And I'm going to put the gray away. Where did I have you? I don't remember, so I'm just going to put you right there for now. Okay, so here's all of my strips. I am going to grab my triangle roller, which I should have had out before I started streaming, but of course that wouldn't be me if I did. Oh, I just noticed that it's glaring. Okay, turning it. So, how you combine the binding. There are some tutorials, not many, because it's the wrong way, that tell you to just sew it together. Don't do that. You want to do it the proper way at an angle, because binding has a lot of wear and tear, has a lot of stress on the quilt. You have to do it at an angle to give it more strength at the seams. If you have any quilts that are falling apart for the binding at the seams, that means that they probably combined it straight on. So if you're doing binding, always do it at an angle. And like my borders, sometimes I cheat and I do them straight on, because those aren't as important in my mind as the binding. So, oh, forgot to show you. So with the binding, one strip face up, the other strip face down. So the wrong side up, right side up, wrong side up. Remember, the pattern is the wrong side of the fabric. The backing is the pattern is the right side of the fabric. The backing is the wrong side of the fabric. Now, if there is a solid, like a good Kona solid, there is no wrong side. Batiks, there's no wrong side. So it depends upon your fabrics. And I'm just drawing a line from one corner to the other corner. And once my line is drawn, I'm going to put some pins in to hold it in place. Okay. Now I want to take this and I want to flip it. So if you notice, when it's sewn, it's going to look like that. So I'm going to flip it. So my right side is now facing up, and you do the same thing. Put the right side down so the wrong side is facing up on it, and draw your line. Okay. Go. And the same thing over and over, where you're just flipping it so the right side is up, taking another strip, having that one face down with the wrong side up, drawing your diagonal, and then putting pins in. Now remember, I have 9 of these strips, so I'm going to do the entire length of the binding all at the same time. This is number 8. And the biggest thing that I forgot to mention, whenever you lay this fabric down on top of each other, make sure that it's perfectly perpendicular so that you have a nice right angle on each corner. So that's important. There we go, and there's all 9. So now what I'm going to do is I've got my J-foot in my machine. Oops. I hit the cut button instead of the needle down button. Right, J-foot's in the machine. I'm going to now sew along those lines that I drew. And again, don't do what I do. I sew over my pins. And you are just cutting, sewing. You're not cutting, you're sewing a straight line following the line that you created. And I always count in my head because I should have 8 of these that I'm sewing because there's 9 strips of fabric. I'm just looking at my bobbin thread. I put in one that was very low because this is a great time to use it. Go. Alright. Oh, I already cut it off. Put my chaining fabric in. And I can put this away. There you are. Now, I don't need, it doesn't make a difference what color thread you use at this stage as long as it isn't white thread for black, white thread for black fabric or black thread for white fabric and so on. The black thread for the gray fabric's perfectly fine. But I wanted to make sure that it did that so you could see that my sew line that I did is right across that line that I drew. Alright, so next step, cut them apart and pull your pins out. If you did what I did and you sewed over your pins, which you're not supposed to do. Go. Now, after your pins are out, you want to trim these edges right here. So, you definitely do not want to leave this fabric on. Not only are there selvages here that you don't want in the binding, but you want it nice and neat and trim because you don't want to add extra bulk into your binding that you don't need. So, I have, the nice thing I like about my triangle roller is there's a line right here that's a 1/4 inch. So, you always want to use at least a 1/4 inch seam. So that gives me a 1/4 inch seam right there. And then trim the 2 edges right along so that when I iron it, it'll open it up perfectly just like that. And just go down the line, trim all of your extra bulk off. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, you may see a couple of follows pop up. These are all members of my Sew Alliance. So if you can, please visit their pages. Take a look at their videos. We support each other. And whenever I'm not streaming, if you come to my page, you may see me hosting my members when they come up. And the chat may be a little slow today because it's Good Friday. So most people are probably doing other things. All right. First thing you do is iron the fabric. Okay, I do have enough water. Okay, so you want to iron your fabric straight. Make sure you get all those wrinkles out. Oh, it's still warming up. Okay, while that's warming up, I'm just locating the fabric for the next quilt, which is the Hyrulean Shield quilt. Okay, so I've got my fabric right here. Let's put that right there. So I have it. Oh. All right. There we go. Now, for your seams, it is completely up to you if you like to iron them open or to one side. Honestly, I like to iron mine to the side, and I like to iron it in this direction that I'm going. There's nothing wrong with ironing them open. Some people prefer to iron them open, especially if they are attaching the binding by hand, because it gives you a little bit less bulk in those seams. I always do mine by machine. I never do mine by hand, so the bulk doesn't bother me at all. this is all step 1. Is getting all of those creases out and sewing all of those seams. Nope, I forgot to trim one. There we go. And start where I left off. Alright, so once it is all the seams are ironed and there's no more creases in there, flip it over and do the second iron. Now for me, I do what's called the tuck in for the end of the binding. There's a couple of different ways. You can sew the edges of the binding or you can tuck it. I tuck it. It depends on how you do it. Sometimes it looks the same, sometimes it's not as nice. It all depends. But I do a tuck, so that means that I need to cut off the edge of my selvage. And then I'm going to leave it just like that because it's going to get tucked in, so I don't have to worry about it fraying. Now, in the last stream, I ironed it over, and I actually said that, you know, it's a better way of doing it, just having the iron on there. I actually did a little bit of research after the last stream, and because it's tucked in, you don't have to worry about it fraying. So that's one less step that I need to do. So all I'm doing is folding it over and then ironing it. I am using steam, as you can hear the water boiling. I feel it just gives me a better press. You know what, I just realized I did not check to see what time the Blue Jacket Penguins game was on tonight. I need to do that because I would like to watch it. Of course muted, because, yeah, we know we don't want YouTube coming back at me with anything I don't have permission. Where is the end? Oh, there it is right here. Okay, so I have my end. Alright, let me clear away everything I don't need. No, I'll need those, so I'll put those there. Okay, and I've got that. Alright, I always put the start and ending of my binding on the bottom of the quilt, because at the bottom, just like whenever I was quilting the Hyrulean Shield quilt, not a lot of people pay attention to the very bottom of the quilt. They look at the middle and they look at the top. So the bottom is where I start and end bindings. Oh, there's my phone. Let me check the hockey schedule before. Playoffs. How about that Caps win last night? Alright. Penguins, Blue Jackets, tonight at 7 o'clock. Okay, 7 o'clock, I'll turn it on. Alright, next, we want to change our foot. We have on my J foot in there right now. I want to change it. I don't see it. To my 1/4 inch piecing foot. Okay. J foot. I bet I knocked it over and it's underneath somewhere. Okay. Oh, 1/4 inch piecing foot. Sometimes when you call them, they show up. How? Sorry, I keep hitting the light. You know what? I think the cat jumped up here and knocked a bunch of things off because I'm finding a bunch of things over here. Oh, I don't see the 1/4 inch piecing foot though. Okay, that just means I will have to get another one. Okay. I have 10 1/4 inch piecing feet because sometimes I teach classes and I have 10 machines. I'll look for the other one later. Okay, so binding. I've got my end of the binding set aside. I find the center of my quilt and line it up. So this is where my seam is going to, oh, you know what? No, I do need to fold it over. The part that I cut off is the part that I don't need to fold over. So I do need to fold this over a little bit. So I'm just going to fold it over a touch, just about a little less than a 1/4 inch. As Eleanor Burns would say, a scant 1/4 inch. Okay. Alright, and that's about half. So I'm going to come down a few inches and start my sewing there. And I hit the cut button again. And I have the raw edge of the binding lined up with the very edge of the quilt. And I'm just doing a 1/4 inch seam. Oops, and my thread broke. Oops, why did that not thread? There we go. Sometimes the feet gets in the way, so if you drop your presser foot, it'll allow you to thread it better. I think it broke because I was going too fast. Sometimes that puts too much strain on the thread and it causes it to break. And bobbin thread is out. I love this color gray, but man, does it shed. As you see, I don't know if you can see in the camera a lot of the threads are coming out. There we go. Okay, at the corners, what you want to do is, I don't think you can see it in that camera, I have the binding facing me, so it's at a 90-degree angle. You take your binding, you fold it away from where you're going, so this is actually at a 45-degree angle, so you have a perfect triangle right here. After you fold it away, put your thumb there and fold it too. So then whenever you press it down, you have a little bump right here. So this little corner here, the little flap can go both ways, but you want to keep it that way whenever you sew it in place. So hold it down in place. You want to start sewing about 1/2 of an inch from the edge. And then same thing, sew on down. Popped my legs out from my table. Again, this is the problem with queen size quilts. Oops, I had the quilt on the mic. If it was causing issues, I'm sorry. I know I said this whenever I was doing the quilting, but most of the time, larger quilts, the biggest thing is just managing the bulk and making sure it's not falling down and there's no strain on whatever you're doing. I did mention this at the last corner, but you want to stop about 1/2 of an inch from the end before you do the corner. So again, I'm at the corner. I'm going to move the strip away from where I'm going next, making a 45-degree angle, and then folding it back over. So that if I held it, there would be a flap that I can move either way, but I'm going to keep it where it is, turn it, and start sewing it. Okay, away, towards, turn. There we go. Hello, Soleil. Okay, just making sure it didn't drop on the floor. And it did not. And here is the last corner. Now you may or may not have noticed when I'm at the corners, I actually let it sit for a few stitches because I'm anchoring the stitches whenever I start and stop. And that just makes sure that those stitches, if they get pulled, are not going to come loose. And I'm out of bobbin thread again. I go through lots of thread for binding for big quilts. Okay, so I've now reached the part where my binding is going to meet. There's a trick that you can do if you want to actually sew it together. I haven't mastered it yet, so I still do the tuck method, where I find where it's going to line up and I trim it just pretty close to where my starting point is, but just far enough to where it's going to go past to where I folded that over. So you see how it just goes past just a little bit there. And I'm going to sew. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to sew just up to it. I'm not going to sew over it yet. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up that bottom one, make sure that's lined up nicely, and set the top one in, so I'm tucking it in. That's why it's called the tuck method. And then make sure that everything lays nicely, and then sew it. I'm being very careful that it's not folding over, that it's not catching. There we are. And now I'm going to go a little bit farther and re-sew the area here just to make sure it's there. All right, so the binding is attached. Okay, step number 1 for me after this one, for finishing off the binding, is my label. So I always put my label in the bottom left of the quilt. So it's going to go right here. I'm just going to make sure. Yep, okay. Because I have put the label on the wrong side before. And I need my parchment paper. Okay. Steam goes off. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. And that's on there nicely. Now, I'm not going to do anything until this cools down because these are the iron-on labels that I have. They are, they're made of polyester, so I've got to make sure that it cools and it stays in place before I do anything with it, because I don't want to take the chance of it peeling up. So I'm just going to wait a few moments. When it's cooled to the touch, then I can continue on. I am ordering new labels that are sew-on. So what I'll do is I'll just put it on there and pin it on, and then I'll hand sew. So what I'll do is I'll pin it on so that I'll trap it in these corners, and then I'll hand sew this part of it. So they're actually sitting at my Maryland address, but I haven't been there in a few months, and I'm not going to be there until May. All right, so we've got our label. I'm actually going to set those aside. Okay, there we go. Now, at this point, I want to make sure there is no hair, dirt, schmegma, anything at all on this side of the fabric or on this side of the fabric. So I always give it a good rolling with my lint roller. Where's my opening? There it is. Before I pin it. There we go, much better. Okay, how you do it. The corners. Pop the corner up. Take your finger and kind of tuck it in there a little bit. You don't want to give it a lot, just give it like a little pressure. If you strain it too much, if you put too much pressure in there, you'll actually rip the stitches a little bit and pull it too hard. So you just want it to be very, very gentle. Just kind of pop it out a little bit. I don't start at the corner, I start just ahead of the corner. So what you want to do is you want to pull the fabric out. Again, don't pull it too hard. If you pull it too hard, you're going to have a very small binding on here. So you just gently pull it, lay it down, and put a pin in it. Now, there's a couple of other methods where there's a clip, the Wonder Clips. I've been thinking of getting them. I haven't had a chance to play with them yet. If they have any at Spring Market, I may pick some up just to play with it. Because, as you will see, whenever I go to sew this on, when I do binding, these pins are going to scratch my arms. And it's really annoying. Now, on all of these little threads that are popping up here, I'm just scooting them down out of my way and just kind of tucking them inside of the quilt. And that's all you do for the entire length. Now when I get to the point where I need to lint roll, I stop, I shift, and then I roll again. Because anything that you leave on there is going to get trapped inside the binding. So if you have cat hair in there and you're allergic to cats, guess what? You can never sleep with that quilt. If you are allergic to dust motes and you trap some dust in there, you can't use the quilt. And especially with how long a good quilt will last, you can pass it down from generation to generation. You really don't want anything at all trapped inside that binding. So just take the few extra moments, roll it, get it all out of there, don't trap it in. Yeah, see, the pins are digging into me. I think I'm going to take a look at those Wender clips. It will really, tomorrow, it'll look like somebody, like a cat attacked me. I'll have marks up and down my arms. Now remember, whenever I quilted it, this line of quilting right here that I was doing just to anchor it in to make sure I didn't get the back caught in it, I said that you're not going to see that in the actual quilt because it's underneath the binding. So if you decide to do that for the same reason, you don't have to worry about it showing. You just have to make sure it's close enough to the edge. I can hear my husband upstairs playing Link. Or playing the new Legend of Zelda on the Switch. Okay, now when I get to the end, as you saw, I just flip it up a little bit, just so it's easier when I get to here, the fabric's already sticking up. Okay, that was either a dog or a cat in the back room. Oh, animals. Now when I get to the corner, all I did there was, I did like I normally do, and I pulled the edge out. Now at the corner right here, same thing in that corner, I'm just gently pressing So I'm not pulling it too hard, just a gentle press. And then I'm going to flip my entire quilt to make it easier for the bottom. And lint roll it. Now, once the corner is pressed out, what I want to do is same thing that I did whenever I was attaching it. I want to lay it down so it's coming in the same direction, and then I'm just going to gently tug this and lift it up. And as you see, there's a nice mitered corner here. Although, I'm going to press this out just a little bit more, just to make sure that miter's even nicer. There it is. We have a nice mitered corner. And then you put a pin in it. And I put my pin the opposite way because, as you'll see, whenever I start to sew it down, I pull this out of there. So it's just easier for me to pull out if it's facing in the opposite direction. I have a bent pin in there. Nope, so I got 30 minutes of the hockey game. Okay. Come on. There we go. Okay, now I've reached the bottom where my binding actually came together. So I've got to be very careful. It's actually right here. As you see, it's trying to come apart a little bit. So whenever I flip it over, I've just got to be super careful that it's all together. So I'm going to, until I get to that point, I'm going to treat it the same way. Okay, making sure that's tucked in there, lifted up, and folded over. And after it's folded over, I push it in again just to make sure it's tucked in there nicely. And then I'll put a pin right on the seam, and then pins before and after. A little bit closer than what the spacing is for everything else. And then you see my binding is in there nicely. Oh, I don't think I mentioned it. You may have noticed there's a big blank wall right here. I don't have my Q quilt behind me, and that is because I did all of my packing today for C2E2. So I bring all of my quilts to showcase, my quilts and patterns, so everyone can see them and to showcase them. And I like to have my Q quilt there. So I took it down and packed it up. Okay, so fold it out and over. Whoops, that is not a good miter core. There we go. That's a nice miter. And of course, if you have problems with the corners, there are a ton of YouTube videos out there that can help you. Whenever I was doing the binding for my double-sided quilt, I watched a lot of them. Unfortunately, there's not a good tutorial on binding for a double-sided quilt because there's not a lot of people as crazy as I am that will make a double-sided quilt. It's funny. It's, you know how you're your own worst critic? As I'm pinning the binding for this, I'm looking at the actual quilting going, yep, that's where the thread ran out. Yep, that's where I did this. Yep, that's where I did that. But of course, these are things that no one would notice unless I point them out to them. 3-foot rule, right? If you step back 3 feet, if you can't see it at 3 feet, no one will see it even if they look up close, unless you point it out. Oh, and if you saw my schedule, you may have seen tomorrow and Sunday, I am working on the Mega Man quilts. I'm super excited to work on that. I think I'm going to keep this same setup, and then I will set my clothing rack over here. That way you can see in that camera me grabbing the strips and how I lay them out. So the Mega Man, I keep saying Mega Man. He's inspired by Mega Man, Proto Man, and a bunch of the mechanized style video game characters. So, and we're using the colors of Mega Man, but we styled it after a couple of the different mechanical type creatures that are in games. Humanoid mechanical type creatures. So I'm actually really, really excited for it. I actually have not decided what we're going to call him yet. Jumping Man, maybe. But yeah, I'm super excited to get started on that quilt tomorrow. So I'll be working on him tomorrow and Sunday. So I'll be actually designing the pattern and working on it from scratch, because that's the next pattern that we're going to be releasing in June, just in time for AwesomeCon and Too Many Games. Oh, hey, Amber, how are you? 2 cameras. I didn't think anyone was going to join me in chat today, with it being Good Friday. I am fantastic. In fact, I'm looking at my OBS. With the new setup and the new computer that my husband set up today, I have 22 dropped frames total, so 0.0% of the stream. The stream itself has never dipped, ever. And I got 2 cameras working, so I stole my husband's computer, and it works very well. I'm very happy. I got a lot done today for C2E2. I got all my stuff packed up and ready to go. Still making quilt kits. It takes forever. Got a couple more done today, though. And thank you for the host as always. Oh, yeah, so you saw that? So you know what happened? So, yeah, he apparently had OBS had a couple of quick hotkeys on there, and as he was transferring it over from my computer to his computer, he accidentally hit one of the hotkeys, and a minute and a half later, I'm looking at him like, Mike, you're live. He goes, what? I'm like, look down. You're streaming right now. He goes, no, I'm not. I hit stop for streaming. I'm like, yeah, you were. So it wasn't. He wasn't supposed to stream. So he took those hotkeys away, so he wouldn't do that again. Do I have? Yep. This is my last side. Oh, I didn't see you say hi. That's funny. So today is binding day, so I'm almost finished attaching the binding for the Final Fantasy screenshot quilt, and then I'll do the Hyrulean Crest quilt. And then if I have time, I will finish quilting the Link Stained Glass, although I'm not holding my breath. I don't think I will. I don't think I'm going to get that far. Because the binding on these quilts takes such a long time because they're so big, but that's okay. I think Iron Band's Graham's suggestion of using the gray binding is going to look nice, because you see how it frames it? Oh, so I talked to my graphic designer this week about my new layout, and he was going to have it ready by today, but then I added a whole bunch of extra stuff on. So I'm having him design my headings for all my social media and my YouTube and everything. So he said, look, I can give this to you now, or as I work on all the social media headings and end cards and things like that, if I get some ideas, I can go back to this one and add it in and kind of adjust it. And I'm like, I want them all the same uniform. Yeah, do that. You just keep it. It's fine. Give it all to me. So he's supposed to get it all to me by Free Comic Book Day. So I'm excited. Yeah, no, I'm super, super excited about it. He showed me what it's going to be like. It is so cool. It's red and it's vibrant, but it's not bright. It's so awesome. And then the new follower and new subscriber, if I become a partner one day, which I'm not going to try anytime soon, has little hearts on it. And it's like this guy just totally got exactly everything that I was looking for and everything I wanted. So, super excited. I keep watching my my bit rate, my stream health. I'm wondering if I should increase it. Oh, hi, Lynchy. How are you? No, actually, I live in London, Ontario. I do a lot of stuff in the States, though. I am a citizen, so I actually travel back and forth. And I do video game and comic conventions in both Canada and the U.S. So I am not physically in the U.S., but I go there often. In fact, I am going there on Tuesday for C2E2. Alright, I'm almost done pinning my binding. I just have my last little corner to do. I do lots of international stuff. No, the Penguins won 2-0. Although there's another game tonight at 7 o'clock. So in 10 minutes, I'm going to flip the game on. I do an international. Not only do I do conventions, they bring me in as guest, or I sign up as a vendor, all sorts of things. I also have my own pattern line that you can download as a PDF off my site. I also do commissions, and I ship anywhere. For commission, I do anything everywhere. Although shipping a quilt anywhere outside of North America is a little expensive. I shipped a lap-size quilt to Japan, and I think it cost $60, 60 US dollars to do that. There we go. Okay, binding is done. This quilt right here is actually both the quilts I'm binding tonight are commissions. This one is a Final Fantasy screenshot quilt. Alright, last step. I'm going to switch my foot back to the J foot because it's open and I can see what's going on. And I'm about to get scratched up by some pins because they stick out everywhere. Now, what I'm going to do with the binding is a stitch in the ditch. So this right here, right along the front, I'm going to try to get it right in here without going too far this way or too far this way because I'm using black thread. So if I get a little bit too far this way, that's okay because you're not going to see it. But if I get too far, I'm not going to catch the fabric on the back. So I have to catch the front and the back. And iLinchy, if you look at my website, it's actually down below and up top. It is quiltoni.com. I have tons of examples of commissions. I have my patterns, conventions I'm going to. I'm not doing any conventions outside North America yet. Although, if a convention, quilt guild, quilt store, anyone in any other country wants to bring me in, I would love that. Because I do teach classes in person as well. And I do trunk shows and lectures and all sorts of things. Now, you may notice I am going a little slower than I normally do. This is because I'm being very careful not to go into this gray. Hopefully you can see the black there onto the back. Yeah, a little bit. So it is, I want to be careful because you can see the black on the back, but I don't want you to see it on the front. So I am going to move a little slower than I normally do. Although, Amber, the Capitals did win last night. They beat the Maple Leafs in overtime. The game started out, the Maple Leafs went up 2-0 in the first period. So the Caps came back to tie it up, and it went to overtime, and they won in overtime. And it was great, because remember I went to my husband's softball game, so I got to be the only Caps fan cheering and yelling in the bar. And then the Caps and Maple Leafs play again tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Which is why my stream ends at 5. Because, you know, when the Caps play, I have to have full attention onto it. Okay, so I'm at the corner. Lift it up. I'm going to pull this pin out of here because I don't need this thing anymore. And then I'm going to get one of my safety pins and hook it in here. Now, I'm doing this for 2 reasons. I'm going to turn it, and I'm actually taking the safety pin, and I'm going to pull the safety pin as I'm sewing it. So it's actually going to pull it and guide it until it gets started. You want to do this for 2 reasons. The first reason is it's going to sit there, and it's not going to want to come. So it's going to get a whole bunch of thread under there, and it's going to nest up. You want to avoid that. The second thing it's going to do is the... oh my gosh. See, this is what happens to me all the time. My brain doesn't work. the feet. The feet actually will rub against the fabric and wear down the fabric. So yeah, no, it's for Islandshire. Its quilts are a little expensive. It is the cost of materials. So this quilt alone, the materials were almost $500 US, just for this quilt. So and then if you want to put into the time, so if you put the hourly rate, even at minimum wage, it gets a little expensive because they're handmade. So my quilt patterns there's two ways that you can purchase them. You can purchase them in person at a quilt store that carries them. As of right now, there's only one in Texas, that carries them. And you can also buy them online, and they're instant downloads. So through Etsy or Craftsy, and all of my patterns are $12 US. And so it's an instant download. So if you buy it online, you get a PDF, and you can instantly print it. And you can actually print them on 8x10s. Yeah, I know, right? It's I was super excited. I have one quilt store that's carrying my patterns right now, and they're located in Texas, and so I was pretty stoked about that.
OBS.
I'm sorry?
How's OBS?
Oh, it's perfect. I was just telling everyone that with the new setup, I haven't had a single dip. The bit rate's been staying at 2,000.
Yeah.
And I have a 0.0% dropped frames, which has never happened. Oh, Islandshire, you're in Ireland? I actually have one of my Craft Hacker bloggers. Used to be a Craft Hacker blogger. She had to take a leave of absence for a bit. Lives in Ireland as well. I love that place. Oh, Amber says thanks for fixing it, honey. My husband gets to know my streamer, my followers. Yeah, no, as of now, of course, if there are any quilt stores in Ireland, although from what I hear, there's not a lot of fabric shops in Ireland and not a lot of quilt stores, at least where my friend lives. Yep, that's what I thought. So I just hit the very bottom part of it where my seam is, and it would put too much strain on my thread, and my thread broke, which is perfectly fine. I'm just going to trim it and re-thread it and start again. Yeah, if there is any quilt stores or fabric stores, any place in Ireland that want to carry my patterns, I do of course ship the patterns everywhere. To ship a single pattern is pretty costly for just a consumer, but if a quilt or fabric store buys it in bulk, it actually isn't that much difference to ship like 50 of them than it is to ship one of them. So most of the time my fans across the world that aren't in North America like to just buy them online and download the PDFs. No, and the reason I said I was excited about the one in Texas, because that's where Amber lives, is in Texas. Alright, before I forget, I want to go back and trim these threads for where I started. That second one. There we go. Because if I don't do it now, I may forget. We know my memory. Well, it's funny. So we're leaving on Tuesday for C2E2, and I'm bringing 2 other people with me. because they own a comic book store here in London, where I live, London, Ontario. And C2E2 is a huge convention for comic book store owners. They can meet with their distributor, they can meet with artists. It's a good convention for them as well. So they're just going to come with me in order to attend the convention. So, being Canadians, and they haven't come across the border since Trump was elected, they were super worried about it. So we had a nice long talk, and I said, no, you'll be fine. You don't have to worry about it. Neither one of them has any problems with their records or, with anything else. I just realized I didn't put Amazon Warrior on my website. I didn't update that. She's in my Craftsy and my Etsy, but I didn't update my website. This is a queen size. It's a pain in the rear. Both of the quilts that I'm binding tonight are both queen size commissions. I'm trying not to knock off my keyboard. I do. This is what I do for a living. So I create quilts, patterns, travel, speak, teach. And I do not have any employees at this moment. I do have a lady that takes care of my Etsy store and takes care of my fulfillments of my pillows and quilt kits. But I pay her as a contractor. So she gets paid per thing that she fulfills. But she doesn't make any quilts or anything for me. I am the only one that makes the quilts. But I literally sew like 120 hours a week. I'm always sewing. I do have pillows. Amber, if you go to my website and look at the pictures of conventions, you'll see the pillows behind me. So I actually do throw pillows. They are 14 inches square, and I make zippered pillowcases so that you can take the pillow in and out and wash the pillowcase. I also do dice bags so that when I'm at a convention, not everyone can afford a quilt. Not everyone wants to learn to quilt and buy a pattern. So that's how I get other business, is by selling the throw pillows and selling the dice bags. And the dice bags are made from the leftover fabric of the throw pillows. After I finish this one, before I get started on the next one, which is going to be pretty soon, I will go grab a pillowcase and a dice bag to show you. Although I don't sell the dice bags online. Those are only at conventions. The pillows are only the ones I have extra fabric for, and they're made to order. So the lady that I have fulfill those, she actually makes those throw pillows. So let's say if you decide that you want a throw pillow with half Deadpool on one side and the other side Hello Kitty. Well, I have two fabrics, one's a Deadpool, one's a Hello Kitty. You can pick that with a zipper, and then, depending on what mood you're in, you can have that side showing on your couch. So she has all the fabric for those, and then as those orders come in, she does that. Well, that reminds me, I want to give her some of that house fabric for Harry Potter, so I can start offering that on the website. Thank you very much. Alright, let's make sure, yep. I'm just making sure I overlaid where I started. Alright. Last step. Take out all those pins. Yeah, you see how, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but I've got a couple of scratches already. Tomorrow it's going to look like a cat attacked me. I'm going to have scratches up and down my arm from these pins. And what I'm doing while I'm removing these pins is I'm also looking at the back side just to make sure that I didn't sew too far and catch any of the binding. I think I've only had that happen once or twice when I first started quilting. No, I can't do any pattern. For the patterns that I sell, those actually I do with my business partner, who is who's an artist. So she does lots of stuff with graphic design. So we actually work together on the pattern itself, and the patterns that we do are influenced heavily by either video games, comic books, or pop culture. But we never take them directly from it. So you will never ever see a sprite or a direct copy of anything. The sprites are unique and they are our own. And we have a rollout schedule of one pattern every 2 months. And we alternate video games with the comic and pop culture stuff. So Amazon Warrior was just released, so the next one is going to be a video game. In fact, I'm going to be working on it tomorrow on my Twitch stream. Now, of course, I do have recommendations. So, for example, I just did a giveaway on my Facebook page for the Amazon Warrior because she was just released. And the question that I asked was, what comic book or pop culture pattern would you like to see me make? And then we look at that list, and that's how we get the inspiration and ideas for the patterns. Oh, commissions. Yes and no. So it's for commissions, I can do almost anything. Sometimes I design those. Sometimes Nicole helps me design those. It all depends. I need her help with the patterns because I stink at Photoshop and the layout and the actual making of the laying out of the patterns. But for the commissions, yeah, we can do almost anything. There's some things that we absolutely cannot do. So, for example, this quilt right here, this Final Fantasy quilt, initially, he wanted me to take the opening scene of Final Fantasy IX and pixelate it and turn that into a quilt. Yeah, that's not happening. That is going to be way, 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 way too big if I put all that into pixels. So there was no way that I could have done that. So after talking to him back and forth, we decided on doing a photo quilt where I actually took the screenshots of all of the motivations and had it printed by a professional as a photo quilt into panels. And I am done. And turn that into the quilt. Okay, so you're not going to be able to see the entire quilt because it is so big. But I will show you guys that part of it because it's got the Final Fantasy in there. It's done. Fantastic. It is huge. So after it gets delivered, I will put the picture up on my social media and my website. So you can see the full picture of this, of what it looks like. Alright, let me fold this up and I will get you the pillowcase and dice bag to show you, Amber. There we go. Alright, so we're going to move this one out of the way. Oh, I put my dice bags up there. I'm like, where did my dice bags go? There's a pillow. Oh, let me grab the Hyrulean shield quilt. Stick that there. Oh, excuse me, Marley. Okay. So for the pillows for conventions, I do the same fabric on both sides. So then they've got a zipper, and I put a throw pillow inside of it. Dice bags. That's it. Just a small little bag. You put your dice in there for tabletop gaming. And that's it. So those obviously don't take me as long to make. So they are not as much money. The pillows I charge $30 for, and like I said, they do come with a throw pillow in them. And then the dice bags I charge $8 for. Okay. Next, Hyrulean shield quilts. Oops. There is a pin that I forgot. I may find lots of pins that I forgot because it's so big. Alright, step one. We need to figure out how much binding we need to cut. There we go. Oh, I dropped my water. I'm like, I knocked something down. There it is. Couldn't find the other part of the quilt in there. There we go. And I think, yep, I gotta fold it again. So I'm folding it that way. Now again, whenever you're folding it to take the measurement for the binding, it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, yep, and that's fine. Okay, so 36, oh, there it is. Okay, so 36, this is only folded twice, times 2 is 72. Now this way I folded it over 2 times, so I need to times it by 4. So this one's about 22 times 4, I think it's 88. Yep, 88 plus 72. So for 2 sides, it is 160 inches. Now there's 4 sides of the quilt, so I gotta multiply it by 2. So we have 320 inches is the diameter around of this quilt. No, perimeter. I said diameter earlier too. The perimeter of the quilt is 320 inches. So I've got my fabric. I'm going to use black for this one. The black motif that I used with inside the regular quilt, I believe it's 44 inches. It is. So I'm going to take my 320. I'm going to divide it by 40 because there's a few inches lost whenever you're combining all the strips together. It gives me 8 strips. So I'm cutting 1 strip less for this one than the last one. Alright, so let's move this out of the way while we cut our strips. Lots and lots of math. Oh, just wait until tomorrow's stream whenever I'm doing the Mega Man inspired quilt. Lots and lots of math for that one. Because he's my next pattern. Alright, so I said 8 strips. Again, I'm doing them at 2.5 inches. There's 1. 2. What time is it? Oh, 7:15. All right, let me cut these, and then I'll turn the hockey game on. Three. Four. I can hear Mike listening to the game upstairs, and I'm like, wait, that sounds like the hockey game. 5. 6. 7. 8. Alright. And put that one back. Okay, so combining it. Oops. Put the. Oh, there's the channel changer. Walking in front of the camera. Ignore me. Sorry. That's the only problem. Now that I've got 2 cameras again, remembering that, oh yeah, they're both on, and I can't look at that one. There we are. Home. And NHL. Let me mute it, because we don't want YouTube yelling at me whenever I upload this tomorrow. But hey, you don't... Aww. Here we go. I kicked the light off. Okay, so we are going to watch the Penguin-Columbus game. It's still 0-0. Good. And it's blocked out. So, that means... I have to change my network. Wi-Fi. Yeah, no, I don't want to get yelled at by YouTube again. That's already happened. Come on. Are you watching the game, Mike? I need an answer. Yeah, hockey. It is, I am a big Washington Capitals fan and big hockey fan. And I am going to put on the Columbus Blue Jackets and Pittsburgh Penguins. Because the winner of that game plays the winner of the Washington Capitals and Toronto Maple Leafs. There we go. Okay, so let's go back. Hopefully I don't have to bounce my... Got it. Alright, 0-0. Fantastic. Let's put the controller right there. And hopefully I don't get kicked out again. Okay, alright, so back to binding. We've got strip. Whenever you're combining your binding, one strip is going to be face up. The other strip, you're going to put perpendicular to this strip. Make sure that the salvage is sticking out. And then, let me use my chalk pencil this time. Draw a line from corner to corner. Because that is the line that you want to sew. And then pin your 2 fabrics. Whenever you're taking this, you want to fold it over like this, because that's how it's going to look. Fold it over all the way. So now that becomes the strip that's face up. This strip, again, face down. Make sure your selvages are good. Draw a line corner to corner and pin it. Rinse and repeat until you've done all of the strips. Oh, that threw me off. I looked at the hockey game and it said shots 4-0 and I'm like, Hold on, that's not the score, is it? It just started. So tomorrow and Sunday, the stream is 2 until 5 Eastern Standard Time. And I'm going to be working on, like I said, the next pattern. So I'm going to be doing the math. I'm going to be cutting the strips, sewing them together. I should get it done in 2 streams. I would get it all done in 1 stream if I pre-cut and pre-did a lot of my math, but it's better if I do all that on the stream so you guys see how I do it. I've actually been toying with the idea of coming out with a quilt book on the math of it, of the math of quilting, of how to create a pixel pattern and turn it into a quilt, and how you do the math for that. I just have to get all my ideas onto paper first and see if it's possible. Alright, and now we are just sewing right along those lines we just created. And I'm still have my same foot, I didn't change it, so it's the J foot. Of course, after you sew it all, trim the thread, take the pins out, and then trim the fabric. Now, again, I use the same triangle there it is. The same triangle ruler that I used whenever I drew my lines, because on this triangle ruler along here is a 1/4 inch mark. So whenever I line it up, let's do from the bottom up. When I line it up and I go right along that line, I know I'm cutting it at a 1/4 inch seam. And you always want to have a minimum of a 1/4 inch seam. And then clean the edges. Turning my iron on, getting it warmed up. There we go. So they're all trimmed. Into the trash. See. Okay, now for the ironing. Alright, with the ironing of the binding, step 1 is to make sure all of the creases and seams are ironed. Again, like with the first one, some people prefer these seams to be ironed open. For me, I could just iron it towards the direction that it's going. Doesn't make a difference if it's open. Some people prefer there to be less bulk in the actual binding, and that's why they iron it open. Doesn't bother me. I have no problems with it. Oh, dang it, Pittsburgh scored. Pittsburgh's winning 1-0. We're rooting for the Blue Jackets. I don't want to play the Penguins. I'd rather play the Blue Jackets. Oh, the Capitals and the Maple Leafs play tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Eastern Standard Time. So tomorrow, my stream, if it goes over a little, the latest I'm going to be is 5:30. I've got it scheduled to 5, but the latest I'll go is 5:30. Oh, I'm sorry. Marley's bed is all messed up. Let me fix it. Here you go, baby boy. Did I move things around and mess up your bed? There we go. There's your good boy. Sorry about that. So that way I have time to eat some dinner before the game starts. Oh, I just realized I've had my steam off because I turned it off to put the label on the last quilt. Alright, so next up, flip it over, we're doing the other side. So I'm going to trim the selvage off and fold it over just a bit and iron it. This is going to protect the edge at the bottom of the quilt. There we go. And then I'm just folding it over the top down towards the bottom and ironing it. You're very cute, Marley. You are. He curled up in his bed. I was just seeing if the other ones were down here. They're not. Yeah, you notice I haven't had any special appearances by the cat. She, well, obviously because the ironing board's not on that side anymore, she can't jump on it. She jumped from the side onto my desk, took a big flying leap today in the afternoon while I was doing quilt kits. I had all the quilt kits stacked up on there, so she hit them and they're in plastic bags that are slippery. So they all tumbled off and she went with them. So I think she's learned her lesson and she's not going to be jumping on my stuff at all today. I can at least hope she's learned her lesson, right? Don't want the cat near any of my things for sewing. Don't want any cat hair or dander at all. Oops. I laughed. I'm such a horrible, heartless person. I laughed at the cat when she fell down. That's okay, she's a cat. She didn't hurt herself. She landed on her feet. It just surprised her. And then Marley immediately went running over because he thought she wanted to play with him because she's on the floor now, right? So she hissed at him and ran away. There we go. Binding is all ironed. Now we get to sew it on. Again, whenever I put binding on, I like to find the bottom of the quilt. I'm looking for the Triforce because that's going to be where the bottom is. Hey, and so this is the bottom. Ah. See, my lovely Triforce right there. So that tells me the bottom is right down here. And with this lovely quilt, I have this point right here, tells me exactly that is my middle on the bottom. So that is where I'm going to start. And I'm switching my feet. I'm going to my 1/4 inch pressing foot. Pressing. My 1/4 inch piecing foot. My brain don't want to work, and my mouth don't want to work. All right, where'd my water go? I'm going to have some water before I start. I knocked it off with the big old quilt from the last one. Here you go. All right. There's my end that I ironed. So I'm going to place that there. I'm actually going to do this one a little differently. I'm going to go back to the way I used to do it. And that is secure just the bottom part of it. I think it moves less when that happens. And again, I've got the raw edge of the binding lined up with the raw edge of the quilt. And I'm just sewing them together using a 1/4 inch seam. Stop about 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch from the end. Take your binding so it's straight out. You want to flip it so it's exactly lined up with the way that you're going. Your edge should have a 45-degree angle. Hold it and then flip it back over and then press it down. So if you lift this part up right here, you should have a little flap here that you can bend back and forth, but you're not going to. You're going to leave it right there. Turn the quilt. Sorry. That was my microphone. I knew that was going to happen. I thought it was going to happen with the last one. So we're going to put you right here. It's like I have a microphone right there, so my quilt's not going to knock it over. It still may knock over my mouse, though. Yeah, it's fine. Alright, so turn the quilt. You're going to start sewing about a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch from the edge. Oh, and the thread broke. Oh, it got wound up. For somehow, it got wound around the metal part at the top, and that's why it broke. Okay, let's try this again. Again, the biggest problem with larger quilts is the bulk and managing the bulk. Making sure it's not pulling on the needle, on the thread. You have a nice straight seam. And everything is smooth all the time. After these two, I am done with queen size quilts for a while, because my next bunch of commissions are all lap size. And then of course I've got that one queen size t-shirt quilt, but I'm probably not going to work on that until July. I'll probably get all the lap size ones done first. And then all of the other commissions for people that I'm talking to now are all double size. Queen size quilts are a mixed blessing. They're cool. I can showcase a lot more detail and design. I can do a lot more with them. They make me a little bit more money, but they're a pain in the rear. Come on. There we go. Now I'm making sure you can't see it because the camera doesn't show it. Oops. Bobbin thread's out. But the binding, I have it piled in my lap, making sure that it's not dropping down and touching on the floor, because I have to make sure it's bunched nicely so that it flows smoothly. Just like with the top thread, you don't want any pulling on it, because if it pulls on it, it's going to add extra tension. The stitches are not going to be even, and you may break some thread. All of these little threads that are coming off of the quilt and the binding, I ignore. They're going to get sewn into it. You don't have to worry about them. You don't have to trim them. They are perfectly fine. Oh, come on. Up and over. There we go. The biggest key to that, whenever you turn the quilt, is not to let go of the corner. Because you've lined up that corner nicely, if you let go, you've got to reline it up. And it's easier to line up during that initial way. After you've turned the quilt, it's not quite as easy to line it up. Now, if you remember, whenever I initially trimmed it and did it, I actually, when I actually was quilting it, I hemmed the edges of this. So all of this hemming here is getting hidden within this binding. So you can't see any of that hemming in there. So don't be afraid to hem the edges, especially if it's a pieced quilt. Because if you don't hem it, it's going to start to come apart. Is this my last? Yep, this is my last corner. I thought that was 4. I think it's the end of the first period. So first intermission. Penguins are still winning 1-0. I am getting close. So, I'm finding the edge. Now let me trim the thread from here first. Okay. Alright, so I'm finding the edge. I'm seeing where, I'm doing the tuck method, so I'm seeing where I'm going to tuck it in, and I'm going to move a little bit farther down. Not too much, because I don't want too much bulk in there with the tuck method. And then I sew it almost up to it, and I'm going to take it, lift up this flap here, and take this part, tuck it in, and then take the flap and lift it back over. And then sew it through. That's it. Binding is sewn on. Oh. All right, let's move the mic back, move all this stuff back. Next step, I've got my binding on, so there's my bottom. So I want to make sure that I put my label here. So you won't have this step, but this is where I put my label for my quilts, so you know I made it. that needs trimmed. Okay. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oops. I need to get more down in there. And over here. Okay. Sometimes it has a little bit of issues, sometimes it doesn't. Great. Now I have to wait until that cools before I start messing around with it because I don't want it to peel up. Yeah, the binding on both the quilts is going to take the full 3 hours. Okay, so I'm going to start with the pinning. I like to start in the corner. Let me roll it first. Oh, really? Yeah, I always iron it on for the, with the binding. That's how I put my label on. Now, I'm switching my labels. So once these iron-on labels are gone, I'm switching to a pure sew-on label. So in that case, I'll set the label here. I'll actually pin it on, and then I'll do the binding over it, and then I'll hand sew the rest of it. If too much heat is applied to these iron-on labels, they can peel up. So I don't like that. So that's why I'm going to switch to a pure sew-on one. Oh, come on. And then when you pull the fabric from the other side, remember you're pulling it gently and folding it over. So you're not pulling it hard, just very gently. Yeah, I think the last time I did binding, I had already put the logos in all the quilts. because I had all those issues quilting this. I have a lot of stray little threads on the back that I need to trim. Man, there's a lot of stray little threads. See, this is what happens when you use the wrong needle when you're quilting. Okay. It is almost time to go get some more lint rolling paper. I have 4 of those. I have one here I keep in my studio. I have one I keep with my quilting, my pinning kits. So when I go to the family center to pin my quilts, I have one that goes there. And then I have another one I keep in my car, and then one that goes with me to conventions. I'm not going to need the iron anymore. I'll just leave this over here so it's easier to reach. And every now and then I do like to check the other side just to make sure that I'm doing the correct tension whenever I'm folding it over. And this is just the first of 4 sides. A lot of times I will alternate this with computer work because there's lots of standing whenever you're doing binding. Now I am going to trim the thread in here just because it's easier whenever I actually do the corner. So remember, for the corners you want to pop it out and you want to fold it towards and then lay it down. And then it is a perfect corner. Come on, there we go. Yeah, I just realized, I think for the last quilt, I folded it towards me and then down. I did it opposite of what I'm supposed to do. It still looked good. Still looked fine. But for some reason, I reversed it. How many bindings have I done? And I still reverse it now and then. The best way, though, is to fold it back that way and then this way. It lays better that way. Yeah, it's easier to do it this way too. You're right. It looks better and it's easier. I don't know why I reversed it. Made it harder on myself. I tend to do that a lot. Alright, now I'm reaching the where I folded it over, and as you can see, if I just kind of play around with it, it likes to pop out of there. So I want to get as close as I can without any of the actual fold over. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to take this, I'm going to fold it over. After I fold it over, I'm going to move the fabric and kind of press it around just to make sure that it lays straight and there's nothing sticking out of there. It's in there nicely, and then you put your pin in. And then put another pin right where the folded over part is just to make sure it stays in there. And there's your bottom. If you are interested in making quilts that are going to be judged or showcased in a quilt show, look up the other binding method. So watch that one, how you sew it together, because you guarantee that you have a much nicer looking binding along the bottom. if you're making quilts for yourself or for gifts, fold over method's perfectly fine. Or the tuck method, however you call it. Some people say fold over, some people say tuck. Still intermission. There's 2 sides done. Oops. Okay, the way you're supposed to do it for the corner. Pop it out, fold it back towards the other end, and then fold it towards you. And, oh, the word I was looking for last time was mitered. You have a perfect mitered corner. Oh, game's back on. sometimes there's a little hair that gets in there that gets very stubborn. Here we go. Okay. I'm going to go over 8:30, but that's okay. I will stream until I'm at least done with this quilt. I was hoping to finish quilting the stained glass link. Not going to happen. So that means I'm going to have to do him first thing in the morning tomorrow. Because I need to get him finished and bound before C2E2. Because he goes to Nicole. Oh, I almost forgot to mention. The lady that I know that had her van stolen with all the stuff in it, they found the van this morning. So she had to drive back to Houston to take a look. So when she got there, all of her merchandise was gone. She was expecting that. But they left some of her personal clothing, and they left all of her display stuff. And the display stuff's pretty expensive as it is. So that's all like the grid walls and the cubes and things like that. So at least she doesn't... And the van itself, the steering column, is damaged. So he finds out tomorrow how much it costs to fix that. So at least she doesn't have to start completely over. She at least has all of her display grids. And she got back her clothing. Or some of the clothing. So that's good news. Oh. Okay. Yeah, no, I was super, super excited whenever she told me that. Alright, 3 sides down. cat's growling at Marley. I'm like, what's she growling at? Probably just laying on the floor, not doing anything. Well, that's good and bad. It's good that she's out looking for an apartment. That's pretty cool. It sucks that she hasn't found one yet. Yeah, I imagine LA is super, super hard to find decently priced housing. Alright, let's move all this over. Okay, so this is all pinned. I did do that corner, didn't I? Yep, okay. And I'm going to switch out my foot for the J foot so I can see my stitches and I can see what I'm doing. Oh, hey, the score's 1-1. Blue Jacket scored. Fantastic. Yay. So same thing like the last quilt. I am sewing in the ditch in the area between the binding and the quilt itself. So from the front, you actually don't see the stitches at all. You only see them from the back. And because I chose a black thread, it'll blend in with the binding on the back. Unlike the last one, it'll stand out a little bit, which is actually what I wanted. See, that's weird that she doesn't see the actual landlords. I would be hesitant. Whenever I lived alone and I rented, I actually am lucky, I've never had a roommate. Except for one semester of college in a dorm. So, whenever I was single, I luckily made enough so the area that I lived in, I could rent a nice one-bedroom apartment for me and my dog. And whenever I was apartment hunting, I always made sure that I could meet the renting office and actually speak to the people that were going to be in charge. There's my pin. I'm like, I couldn't find my safety pin. So remember, the reason why you're putting the safety pin in here is to help guide it through, because you do not want it to stick there, because for two reasons. Number one, the thread will nest up underneath and you'll get a whole bunch of extra thread and it won't look good. Second reason is if it sits and chews against the feed dogs will wear the fabric. And that is not good. So to help along the corner, I always just pop in my safety pin. Same safety pins I use to pin the quilts. And just guide it along, just like I do with chain piecing. Alright, here is the center on the bottom. So I'm just going to move a little slower. Great. No problems. Oh, Pittsburgh scored. It's now 2-1. Would you like a special treat? You would. All right, come here. Come here, Marley. Let's see if I can do this without getting the other DOGSs down here. Oh. What is this? Come here. Come here. People want to see you. Come here. I know, you're very cute. Here you go. You can go have a greenie. I know, right? Well, the next two games, they go to Columbus. Oh my gosh, so we, every New Year's, I have a bunch of friends, and my husband and I travel around, and we go wherever the Capitals are. So every New Year's, we'll be wherever the Capitals are playing. So one year, they were playing in Columbus. So we went to Columbus, and the people there that had season tickets, that live in Columbus, were so nice and so genuine. Like, chatting with them, talking to them. It was wonderful. And the first time that Columbus scored, it scared the living bejesus out of me. I screamed because in Columbus, if they score, they have a cannon that they shoot off, and it reverberates throughout the entire arena. It is so loud. It scared me. So, by the beginning of the third period, the Blue Jackets were up 5-0, and this is whenever they weren't that great. And we're like, oh man, that stinks that we traveled all this way and the Caps aren't even going to score. Well, all of the season ticket holders around us that were being super nice to us kept telling us, oh, don't worry, they'll blow it in the third, the Caps will still win. And we're like, that's not going to happen. Yeah, the Caps won 6-5. They also, in Columbus, they also have a really great hockey bar that's right down the street from the arena, where in the men's bathroom, they have stickers of all of the opposing teams in the bottom of the urinals. It's really funny. I made my husband take a picture. Oh, don't knock over my keyboard, please. There we go. Phew. Almost done. Is it good, Marley? He's down there chewing on his greenie I gave him. I was moving too fast. There. and that's where I started it, so I am almost done sewing this. Let me trim the threads. Oh, let me trim the threads. Oh, I'm not running that far over. That's not bad. And just to show you how much bobbin thread I go through doing binding, the bobbin's almost out again. It'll last for this little bit though. And Hyrulean Shield quilt is done. Alright, I'm going to pull all the pins out while I sit my bum here. My legs hurt. Now remember, when I'm pulling these pins out, I'm not just pulling them out, I'm looking to make sure that the stitches on the back side caught every bit of that binding. So if I see any stitches that haven't caught the binding, I need to re-sew that area. My arms aren't as scratched as they normally are. Still don't like them being scratched though. I think I'm going to take a look at those Wender clips. Because apparently the way that they work, you stick them on and then you can sew right over them. Either that or they're like right here, so you can sew just on the edge of it. I don't know, I haven't played with them yet. I think I might. I may get a new toy. Oh. Oh, come on. Stop. I dropped a pin. Oh. Even taking the pins out of the binding takes forever. Although this is my new favorite quilt. I really, really like the way this turned out. when I showed it to my quilt guild last week, that's what I told them. I said, yeah, it's my new favorite quilt. Ow. Alright, it is done. Hyrulean Crest quilt. Where's the bottom? Oh, I flipped it. There's the bottom. Yeah, this thing's huge. That's probably about as much as I can show you. So again, this is one where after it gets delivered, I will put the entire picture of the whole thing up on my social media so you can see what it looks like. And of course this one's definitely going to go on my webpage because I like it a lot. So thanks for joining me. And thanks for watching the entire process of start to finish for this quilt. So again, tomorrow, streaming 2 to 5 Eastern Standard Time. Sunday, same time. And I will be working on the next pattern in my pattern line. So I actually have to finish the pattern, I have to design everything, and I have to actually make the quilt. So, just to make sure that all of my math, all of everything that I do is correct. So, tomorrow, I will see you guys then. Thank you again for joining me. Have a fantastic night.